sanctuary so we can start our service. Shabbos, 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 Shabbos. Sol Zayin Shabbos. Shabbos, 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 Shabbos. Sol Zayin Shabbos. Shabbos soll sein, Shabbos soll sein, Shabbos soll vom ganzen Welt. Sholem, 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 soll sein ihm Sholem. Please, Sholem, 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 soll sein ihm Sholem.
Everybody's outside still eating their potato latkes.
Shabbos soll sein, Shabbos soll vom ganzen Welt. Glickle, 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 glickle. Everybody inside the shul. Let's begin the service. If you go inside the sanctuary, Sholem soll sein, Shabbos soll sein, glücklich soll sein, fröhlich soll sein, Shabbos soll vom ganzen Welt. Und as the Rebbe singt, und as the, you come inside?
They're dribbling in. There they come. It takes time.
She's in Coca-Cola. In Coca-Cola. Okay. Let's come.
Oi. Hear what he says. Scary.
Forces with no people.
But nobody complains. It's been a novelty.
Okay, let's start.
They're dribbling in. They're coming in. They're coming in.
They're dribbling.
Yeah, they don't want to give up their potato luckies.
Okay. Where is the rabbi? There is the rabbi.
Hello? Where's the cantor?
Here is the cantor. Okay.
Echo has a sign. Are you pouring something?
Okay. I know that you got a piece of paper with a prayer inside that we are going to say it later on. Keep it with you, please. We do have a little problem. Okay. As in every Jewish home, there is one only moment of silence. That is when we are eating. Yeah? Besides that, we talk all the time. So here now comes the time for singing, to pray. And why when we are not singing or praying to be silent. Yeah? We have people in the back that they are still schmoozing. Yeah, and we're gonna let them do that, but we are not going to engage in their smoothing. In their smoothing,
He's working on English.
To be quiet here. Stuart, Papa, can you lower a little bit this mic, the number 2? You can leave somebody the task. I was just for you to know what are coincidences. Coincidences. The Kabbalistic people say that in Gematria, the month of Kislev, that is the month of Hanukkah, if you add all the letters, the value of the letters, you will get the number 8. The word Hanukkah, if you add the value of all its letters, you are going to have the number 8 also. If you add all the candles that we lit every day, yes, we will lit 44 candles. That 4 and 4 is going to be 8. Okay. Do you know how many people sang today for the dinner? 107. 8. Okay. Again. So that was casual things. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, we are going to start our service on page number 13. Page 13, Shalom Aleichem. 4 lines on page number 16. They are coming like a phone.
Bye.
We have the Baruch, page 28.
Okay, we bow towards the ark as the cantor leads us in the Baruch. As the curtain is closed, you may be seated. I'd like us to turn to the special Hanukkah reading, which is on 386. 386. Afterwards, I'll make my remarks. 386. God, you create day and night, rolling away light before darkness, darkness before light. Together, thank you for the darkness. Without it, we could not appreciate the light. By the darkness, we can measure blessing, health by sickness, laughter by tears, riches by poverty, freedom by oppression. In the darkness of the night, the Maccabees lit a flame which still illuminates our lives. Thank you for giving them the courage to resist. In centuries of night, Jews defied the darkness and lit flames, and by those slender lights from torn and tear-soaked prayer books, they pleaded for your mercy and asked an end to exile's night. Thank you for the answer to their prayers and for restoring Israel's light. But still night reigns in all the world, and the darkness teach us to light candles. Teach us to light candles, even as we do each night, in memory of ancient light after darkness. The candle is small, not far from where it brightly flames, the darkness closes in. But candles light other candles, and light draws strength from light. Each night of life, let us add candles, the candle of hope, the candle of faith. Together, the candle of brave deeds, the candle of freedom. We thank you for the darkness, even as we thank you for the light. Amen. Well, you put the prayer books aside. Rabbi's going to speak. What did the rabbi speak about? He spoke about 20 minutes. I always liked Hanukkah. Hanukkah was always my favorite holiday of the year. And if you go into any given Hebrew school class, you say to the kids, which is your favorite holiday, they'll probably say Hanukkah. Hanukkah's had a, not a spotty past, but the thing is about Judaism is that things happen. Sometimes we call them miracles. The great American poet Walt Whitman said, "Who makes much of a miracle? Myself, I see nothing but miracles. Every leaf dropped in the street is a package, a candle, a blessing dropped from heaven. And so will it continue forever and for all time." Well, as a kid, I wrote it, not as a kid, but last week I wrote an essay about Hanukkah growing up in New York City, and I'm sure most of you have similar memories. I don't know if Hanukkah was a big deal holiday, but I remember liking it very much because it also meant we were going to have, see, Rabbi Nolan, the school principal, who was also my rabbi, he couldn't call it the holiday recess. He called it the winter recess. So we became Druids very early in life. Later on, long before I thought of going to rabbinical school, I was curious about the origins of this particular holiday. Now, we all know the oil story, yes? Why do we light candles for 8 nights? Right, because the miraculous bottle of oil burned for 8 nights, and of course the Maccabees. See, the difference between the Greeks are the bad guys of the Hanukkah story. They're not even Greeks from Greece, they're called Syrian Greeks. Nobody really knows about their origin. What happened was about 350 BCE, Alexander the Great set out to conquer the entire world. And he would have done it too, except he died at the age of 36. They said maybe he was poisoned. In the end, they decided, I've seen a golden medallion with his face on it. And as my father used to say, he doesn't look well. He dies at the age of 36. Probably it was yellow fever, it was malaria. But the same empire in the Middle East, which he set up so quickly, fell apart twice as quickly because you had 2 of his foremost generals In the south, in Egypt, you had Ptolemy, that's a silent P as in Smith, and you also had in the north, you had Seleucus, or as we used to call them in Hebrew school, Seleucus. And Seleucus and Ptolemy immediately started fighting. Ptolemy is in Egypt, Seleucus is in Syria, and you've got this really nice country right between them, amazing waterfront property, and of course no oil. But they march in and conquer it, and the person who wins is a fellow named Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus IV Epiphanes. There were apparently 3 other guys named Antiochus. And he, of course, was Syrian Greek, and he called himself Epiphanes, which means half God, or perhaps it means the God made manifest. His enemies, who obviously didn't like him, called him Epimanes, which means half maniac. There was nothing insane about the villain of the Hanukkah story, about this guy Antiochus. He minted coins with his face and name on them, and he had himself sculpted, which they did before they had Instagram. And the head is Antiochus, but the body he identified with Zeus, the king of the gods, and the body is very muscular. Antiochus was short and fat. He wasn't tall and lean. But he is the bad guy of the Hanukkah story. And growing up in Hebrew school, I learned all of this, including the part where Antiochus decides it would be a good idea for the Jews to eat pork. So he sends messengers all over Israel, and they go into towns, and the Jews don't know what to do. At one point, they try hiding in caves, but the Greeks send in soldiers to kill them. And then they come, the Greek soldiers, the Greek messenger, comes to the little town of Modin, which still exists. Modin, I visited there, all I can remember is it has a lovely water tower. But it's not much of a tourist attraction. But what happens is that living in Modin is an elderly priest, a Kohen. His name is Mattathias, and his dynasty is Hasmonean, Hashmonai. They all have different dynasties. And he's got 5 sons, not in birth order. Shmuel is the oldest, Yonatan is the youngest. Somewhere in there is Yehuda, as also Yochanan, and there's one more left who I can't remember. Eliezer. Okay, Eliezer dies in battle. It's very sad. For the first time, this is later on, the Greeks used elephants to fight against the Jews. And the Jews had never seen elephants before. They thought there was some strange beast that was half man, half monster, because of the men riding on top steering them. And Eliezer, who's also never seen an elephant before, says, "These creatures are flesh and blood, as are we." And seizing a long spear, he crawls under one of the lead elephants and jabs him in the belly. The animal dies, smushes him. It's kind of nasty. And the Jews win the battle. But at this point, what they're doing is they're fighting guerrilla warfare. The Greeks were the finest soldiers in the world because they had the phalanx. Okay, the phalanx is really a hollow square. And you've got your boys standing shoulder to shoulder. Each one has a really long spear. And the idea was to poke the enemy before he could get close to poke you. Horses are not going to attack the phalanx because horses frequently have more sense than human beings. But the Jews did not want to fight that way. Instead, they led the Greeks into the mountains, and it's always take the high ground. The Jews were staying on the high ground, and when the Greek soldiers would come, they would bounce a few rocks off their heads, and so on. And with one thing and another, they won the war. And that's where you've got the oil miracle. Except the oil miracle probably never happened. The oil miracle appears, well, let's do the first and second books of Maccabees. Anybody ever heard of the first and second books of Maccabees? No, because they never made it, okay, well, thank you. They never made it into the Hebrew Bible because they really are pro-Roman, which probably what made sense in those days, because if the Romans are ruling, at this point it's around the 1st century, you might as well suck up to them so you can get ahead. But that's why the first and second books of Maccabees did not make it into Jewish tradition, into the Hebrew Tanakh. Because in the books of Maccabees, it says, the reason that we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 days is this. If you're wandering in the wilderness, if you're climbing mountains and fighting that, guys. Do you have time to buy a lulav and etrog and build a sukkah? No. So the real reason, according to the books of Maccabees, for the 8-day festival is that they weren't able to do those things, build a sukkah. So when they chased out the Greeks, they had a delayed celebration of Sukkot, which lasts for 7 days, plus Simchat Torah. 7 plus 1 equals 8, and there's your 8 days. The story of the oil is in the Talmud. It's Talmud Shabat, the one dealing with Shabat. And the candles they're talking about, what can you use to make candles? You couldn't just get them from China the way we do. Wax, paraffin, use animal fat, kosher animal, olive oil. Okay, they had something called the Judenstern. This was later on in the Middle Ages. It was a metal, 6-sided vessel, and you would light it on Friday. It was on a pulley, and you'd hold it up to the ceiling, not too close to the ceiling. You don't want to burn down the house, but that's what they used to illuminate their dwellings during Shabbat. Well, what happens here is that in the middle of this whole conversation, use this to make candles, use that to make candles, one of the rabbis says, it's like a sidebar, my Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? And the other rabbis will perk up and say, oh, that's a holiday, the oil lasted for 8 nights, and that's why we light the candles for 8 nights. And then they go back to discussing the Shabbat candles. It just appears as an aside. Well, from that particular story, I cannot tell you. Back in the day, remember when they made those multicolored candles that we light on Hanukkah? Do you remember when they made them in Brooklyn? Remember when they were like, what, a quarter a box? And everybody's mother kept them on the door of the fridge, keeping them all year. And of course, you take them out on Hanukkah, and they've congealed into one big candle. Well, okay, that's another possibility. But that is the 2 reasons why we celebrate for 8 nights. Whether it was Sukkot or it was the miraculous bottle of oil, it doesn't matter. We still have it. Well, what happens later on is that the story of the Greeks are gone, the Romans take over, and Hanukkah kind of falls into what they call desuetude. Nobody really celebrates it anymore because the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans, did 2 things wrong. They were Kohanim. Is a Kohen supposed to go into battle? No, and they did. Is a Kohen afterwards supposed to set themselves and their family up as kings? No, but they did. So, and in order to help, this is kind of like the Maccabees, in order to help against the Greeks, invited in the up-and-coming world power. What was that power? Hint, think of pasta. The Romans, very good. So this is known as inviting the fox in to guard the hen house. So the rabbis, by the time Hanukkah gets, shall we say, concretized, they don't like the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans, no way, no how. And yet, the Hasmonean kings, including the famous Queen Shlom managed to keep the peace for over 100 years before the Romans came in. King Herod. King Herod was a totally different ball of wax, so to speak. Well, at this point, Hanukkah really gets ignored. Nobody really thinks about Hanukkah. But later on, now we've got Zionism. What was the purpose of Zionism?
To populate Israel.
Yes, Zionism was meant to populate Israel, or perhaps Uganda. For a while there, they thought we would end up in Uganda. I'm glad that didn't happen. Okay, Israel's tough, but Uganda would be worse. Anyway, what happens is that the rabbis and the founders of Zionism need a holiday which is going to restore the faith, number one, because all the Jews are assimilating, and also to get those skinny, tubercular yeshiva boys off their backsides and out into the fields, either farming or at least playing soccer. And that's when Hanukkah becomes popular again. It was a Zionist dream. You can be an intellectual Jew, but you should get out there and swing a pickaxe or a shovel or dig a hole and learn how to farm. That's the beginning of Hanukkah's revival. What really gives Hanukkah a kick is after World War II. When Shlomi came marching home, we were desperate to be accepted in American society. The truth is, the U.S. Armed Forces did a great deal to make the Jews acceptable, because if you were serving alongside a Jewish person, you developed that particular respect. They come home and they need to be accepted. Now, you cannot have a Christmas tree because the rabbi doesn't like it. Luckily, there's a holiday which comes around the same time, and Hanukkah becomes the biggest deal of all. I don't know if it still is. It still? Yes? No? I guess so. But these were the days before Cyber Monday or Taco Tuesday, whatever it was. And the epitome of this, I had this in a book. Tell them I said hi. Okay. All right. It's 8 o'clock. We should be done now.
She's on the phone.
I was teaching my college class, I have to confiscate the phone. Okay. Anyway, let's finish this up. The Dre-Dell Corporation of Patterson, New Jersey. I'm sure you've heard of them. Dre-Dell. I have a picture of this. They made a 4-foot-tall dreidel, and the idea was you were supposed to pile the gifts around it so that the children could wake up on Hanukkah morning and enjoy their presents. Sound familiar? It didn't really catch on, luckily. So, in closing, we really have to respect Hanukkah. It's a great little holiday. In the meantime, the Jews in Israel, Hanukkah is not a big deal, because Purim is a big deal. Because the Jews who came, this is amazing. The Jews who came from the Arab countries made a big deal of Purim because it came the same time as a Muslim holiday. We've always been a minority. We've always managed to survive. What was the other thing? That's it. Happy Hanukkah. Thank you so much. I want to get extra points here.
So in preparation for the Shema Israel, the paragraph before the Shema Israel on page number 29, Avat Olam. Avat Olam, Beit Israel, Torah u'mitzvot, u'kim u'mishpatim, otanu nivarta, al ken Adonai Eloheinu, v'shofteinu u'mekubenu, nasiach be'u'kenu.
words which I command you this day you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children, and recite them at home and away, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your homes and upon your gates. All right, we're reading silently to the bottom of 30. All right, we'll continue now. The Michamocha on page 32. I hate to say this once a year. Actually, I said it last week. Michamocha, that's Mem, Kaf, Ed, Yud, which spells Macha.
It's shaky.
Refu'ahShelemah, a quick and speedy recovery, and keeping their names in mind, Jews, Gentiles, friends, relatives. Just read the English paragraph. In fact, we're not reading the English paragraph. We're going to Misha Derach by Debbie Friedman.
So you have the Misha Derach with you. It's very well known, the melody.
Help us find the courage to make
Refu'ahShelemah, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, there are some candies in the back. Okay?
Page 34.
Shabat, page number 34. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
Kaddish. As the ark is closed, you may be seated unless you're doing mourner's Kaddish. Mourner's Kaddish is on 52. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shnei rabo amen. Yalvad yibrach v'yutei v'yamliach malchutei. V'chayei v'chol v'yimei v'chol v'chayei v'chol Yisrael, Ha'agalam, Bizman Kariv, Yibru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba, Bevorach, Le'olam, U'Meir Maya, Yiporach, Yishkabach, Yipoar, Yitrumah, Yinaseh, Yitadar, Yitaber, Yitalal, Shelei, Yikudisha, Re'elu, Ye'elam, Yipobir, Kata, V'shirata, Tishpakata, V'nechmata, Gam Yirat Yomah, Yibru, Amen. Yehi Shmama, Rabba, V'Yishmaya, Ayim Aleinu, Yalko Yisrael, Yibru, Amen. Ose Shalom, B'Mama, Uyase Shalom, Yalko Yisrael, Yalko Yishmeti, Yibru, Amen. All right, you may be seated before Andrew leads us to the Adon Olam. We're going to hear a few words from our very, very, very wonderful and hardworking temple president, Rita Fleming.
Did you have a wonderful time tonight? Tonight was to see three beautiful children, but these two especially, children running up and down the steps in our beautiful shul, because they're our future and they bring such beauty into our lives. So thank you both for being so special. I'd like to before I give you an announcement about an upcoming event, I'd like to let you know that tonight there was a little error made in menorahs being taken home, and someone took home a precious menorah that looked a little bit like theirs, with 2 lions on it and candles high up. It was a very precious gift from our wonderful member, to our wonderful member, from her mother. So, if you know of anyone who's got the wrong menorah and left one with lions here, please let them know that it's very precious to someone who's very precious to us. I know it will come back. On to our events. Next Sunday, January 5th, we're going to have the second part of a wonderful lecture by our own Dr. Murray Lichtenstein. It will be on words and the derivation of words that we use all of the time that come from our own Jewish history. So Dr. Lichtenstein's lectures are always fantastic. I want to thank all of you who came tonight, members, non-members, new friends, old friends. It's so lovely to have you all here and to see the shul so full of joy. At the end of January, on the 26th, Sunday the 26th, we are having a food packing event sponsored by Federation and The Cupboard. The Cupboard is an organization that feeds needy Jewish families. So we're going to have a huge food packing event here, and we need volunteers. We already tonight have 2 table captains from our new members, Gary and Larissa Simmons, and thank you so much. We will need other volunteers as well. It is a huge undertaking, but a very worthwhile one. So keep an eye on the bulletin, keep an eye on the website. Know that you're loved by every temple member here and by this beautiful shul that hugs us all. A good Shabbos and a happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Rita. Just a quick advertisement for myself. Tomorrow, we have an overall. It's a wonderful event. We want to say Mazel Tov to the Chosn Kala, the bride and the groom. They are related to our own Malcolm and Margaret Black. It's a 3-Torah Shabbat because there's the Shabbos Torah, the Rosh Chodesh Torah, the New Month Torah, that is, and the Hanukkah Torah. Because if you've got an 8-day festival, you're always going to have at least one Shabbat in the middle. And finally, for myself, my discussion group is going to be dealing with the Dalai Lama's The Art of Happiness. I think everybody can use a little happiness this time of year. Okay? And Cantor will sing us out.
Yeah, and my personal note, I want especially to thank Sharon Gilbert and her personal life. They are new members here in the community, and Sharon, besides being a dentist, a very well-known dentist, she was able to leave people with the open mouth, not only because she was working on the market, but also because her talent and good attitude and kind of menschlichkeit that she has. So in my personal note, and you have to know that she just, we say break your leg, okay, she broke her finger. And she's playing with that. I mean, she was able to say no, but she in the call of duty, and she's here. So this deserves more than just so guess what? We're going to sing another. You guys are here, but it's going to be another music, okay? What's the name of your sister? Kayla, come here. Kayla 5, 9, Kayla. Okay, so we are going to sing the Adonai with the tune of Mount Su. So if you don't know the words, you can say that. I'm going to say the words. Okay? You know Professor Canada? Okay, that's great. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Please rise for the closing benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And the Lord turn his face unto you and grant you peace. We'll say Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, a good Chodesh, Chag Simcha. Praise God.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.